Welcome, everyone, to the JRPG Pursuit, a podcast talking all about JRPGs from collecting, playing, and some hot topics, like one we have today. I am one of your hosts, Emily.
I'm another host, and my name is Branden.
And I am the third host, and my name is Abdallah.
So, collectively, we've been doing this now for a couple weeks, and we've been having a lot of fun with this podcast and talking about some JRPG topics. One of which we're going to talk about today with phasing out of certain digital eras. But before we start with that topic, we want to first kind of go around and talk about some latest pickups or some other sort of things in the JRPG space we wanted just to briefly talk about. So who wants to start?
Dala, why don't you take it away this time?
All right. Okay. So I know last time I talked about pre-ordering or picking up a couple of games, and those games came in. I've not opened them yet, but here is Juan Yuan, as well as Silent Hope. I need to open this up, actually. It's just been sitting around. It's got like a pretty hefty, this is a hefty box. It's got a pretty big art book in here, so I'm excited to take a look at that and listen to some of the soundtrack of that.
Yeah, it's a big boy. Thank goodness for Woot selling. You got it on Woot, right?
Yeah, I did. Totally. Yeah, it was so cheap, and I've heard pretty decent things about it. So I was like, yeah, why not? Gotta
Yeah,
grab
I hear
it.
it's a fun little dungeon crawler, right?
Oh yeah,
One of those kind
it's
of
like
go
an
out
action.
and gather stuff.
Exactly, it's like an action RPG kind of like dungeon crawler-esque type thing. So it looks like a good time. Something that you can throw on the Switch and play while you're like watching something maybe.
Yeah.
And Brandon and I actually ended up running around this weekend to a couple of our game stores in Indiana and picked up a couple of games. One of them being the physical version of Shadows of Adam.
Yeah, I was really surprised to see that. I didn't realize that it came out physically. I
Yeah,
had no idea.
Yeah, I didn't know either.
same here. So I saw that and I
Very
was like,
cool.
you know what? Might as well grab that for the collection. And I actually never got a physical version of Dot Hack GU. So I have this
Nice.
digitally, but have yet to pick it up physically. So glad I kind of picked that up, and I'm hoping the remaster gods will help and smile upon me for the original games to be remastered one day.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
hoping for those too. I picked up that same collection on the Switch before it got way out of print, but it's really cheap, I think, still, right, on the PS4.
Oh yeah, I picked this one up. I think it was like from a used game shop for like $10. So
Nice,
could
nice.
not.
It's the way to do it now.
Yeah, exactly. It was a great
The
deal.
Switch game, I don't know how much it is now, but get the Japanese one, I think, for a reasonable price, but the PS4, I think, is the way to go if you own that console, of course.
Yeah, exactly. It just plays a bit better, I think.
Well, that's a PS2 era game, right? So I think on the Switch it's okay, but
Hopefully, you try that. And
probably
let me
it's
know.
fine. Yeah, I still need to test it out, but from what I've gathered, it looked like it ran just fine.
Okay, that's perfect.
Well, and I want to assure you guys that they will be remastering the original Dot Hack games because I recently completed the 4 original PS2 games in my collection. The original Dot Hack Quadrilogy.
Is it like a tetralogy?
Tetralogy. That sounds more like a thing I've heard. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I recently completed that, and it was a
I was gonna
stupid
say
amount of money.
Quartlet.
It was like so much money to buy that 4th game. The first 3 are all reasonable. The first one's dirt cheap, and the 2 and 3 are very reasonable. And then 4 is like
Just
second mortgage kind of deal. But I bought it on vacation, and because I was on vacation, money didn't count. So
That's true.
that was my excuse. But now that I've bought that, for sure, they're going to remaster those, and it's going to be great. So look forward to that.
someone needs to take one for the team, so we can all
That's what I'm
enjoy
here
a
for.
remaster. So thank you, Brandon.
I'm the chump. Everybody, you're welcome. So yeah, I picked up a few things when we were out and about. Is that it, Dalla? Sorry, I didn't cut you off.
Yeah, that's
Done.
about it.
That's it. Okay. So yeah, I picked up a few things as well. The first thing, I picked up this lovely steelbook for Ni no Kuni 2. I have Ni no Kuni 2 already, but this is the Steelbook with the CD in there, and it was $5, and I'm like,
Yeah.
this is a good game. Like, why is it
Yeah.
so cheap? I feel a little bad for it. But $5, how could you say no? I also picked up Tales of Vesperia Definitive on the PS4. I have it on the Switch. There are some slight improvements or like frame rate improvements in the PS4 version, from what I understand. But the real issue is that I bought the collector's edition for the Switch, and the Steelbook that they sent me was a PlayStation 4 Steelbook. Like, that's what they included with all the Switch games. I'm like, yeah.
They cheapened out. They didn't want to do other sizes.
It was so dumb. So I was very mad about that, but now it's finally dropped in price enough that I'm like, I can double dip on this and get the right version. And then I picked this up for my wife Jen and I to play at some point ever forward. I don't know a lot about it, but it's a chill-looking sort of adventure game, and I figured that would be fun to go through.
Of course. Yeah.
And finally, because I'm trying to get the Disgaea games now, I picked up Disgaea 5. So, yeah,
That's nice.
that's what I've been up to. What about you, Emily?
I've not been buying too much because I'm preparing for my Asia trip and hoping to pick up some goodies there. But I did have something come in the mail that I talked about last time, and that is the Baldur's Gate 3 Deluxe Edition. And it is nice.
That's a big, beautiful box.
Oh, yeah.
It's beautiful. They packaged it well, so there's no dents or anything in it. I was coming from Ireland, so I was a little concerned. But came right safe and sound.
Awesome.
Well, that's a relief.
Are you gonna do a little unboxing in one of your videos?
Eventually show it. I don't know about unboxing. I feel like there's so many on YouTube that I kind of shy away from unboxings.
Okay.
Unless it's something I get, like
Specifically is requested of
specifically
you
for
I guess that's
something,
true.
or if they ask me to make a video, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Makes sense.
But yeah, I think this is definitely worth picking up though for the price. And if you are into physical game collecting, they did say that they're trying to prevent scalpers from marking it up. So it should be, at least, I think, for the end of this year, still available. But we'll see kind of the progress and how much they'll kind of keep up production on that.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess we'll end this little round of pickups and get into the topic for today.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So I guess in recent news, we just had the Xbox 360 store close. And this is just an example of sort of a transition into a console becoming more retro, at least on the digital storefront, where now we can't buy anything digitally on these consoles anymore. And we kind of wanted to dive into not only the 360 today, but also just talk about other consoles that are kind of heading in that direction and what things to maybe look out for, or what the consequences of some of these kind of things mean. And I guess dive a little bit more into this topic than just the surface level you hear about, oh no, the store's closing or it's closed.
Yeah.
So I guess between you two, well, I guess maybe talk about the 360 first. Have you guys had much experience with the 360s and specifically JRPGs on there?
I didn't. The kids that mostly played the 360 were the kids that would have given me wedgies in high school. That was my understanding of it. Now I know that's not true, but so I never did Xbox. I only found out actually long after the fact that there were like some banger JRPGs on the Xbox 360. It was just that far off my radar. So I did not mess around with it at all. I have one now as a collector, and I have a bunch of those games, but I have not delved into that library yet.
How about you, Abdallah?
Yeah. So I don't know if I was one of those guys who would give you wedgies, but
Oh,
I
you
did.
100% would have. 100%. Dog, come on, you know you would have.
But I did have an Xbox 360 when it came out. I was following the scene with Sakaguchi and the others, and I was really into Mistwalker, and I knew Mistwalker was going to specifically make games for the Xbox at the time, and so I did drop in and grab an Xbox right off the bat, that red ringed, and then my current one is a slim version that I got soon after that, but I did pick up like Lost Odyssey, Blue Dragon, and both those games worth having an Xbox to play them, because
Yeah.
especially Lost Odyssey, I think that's like the Final Fantasy game we never got.
Yeah, a lot of people call that, like, kind of jokingly, but kind of not. They call it Final Fantasy 13.
Yeah, basically,
Yeah.
it's such a it has such a good Final Fantasy vibe to it. And I do recommend, like, honestly, like anyone who wants to play, who has a chance to play it, do try to. It's like one of the games that I wish, like, I would hope that, I know we talked about remasters last time, is that bringing that to the rest of the systems, and allowing people who have PlayStation and otherwise be able to play it. But
did you hear the statements from the developer about that game and potential remakes or remaster supports? He said he was against it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That he has no plans to do it himself, which can mean multiple things.
It could. And that's worth bringing up. Well, we should put a pin in that, because that's pertinent to, like, the broader discussion about what happens when these consoles transition right into this new, like, era of being retro. It's a massive problem. But Emily, I don't think you had said you'd never had 360, right?
My brother had one, so I, by proxy, got to play a little bit, but we didn't really dive into the JRPG library as much. I did rent Final Fantasy 13 from the library, and I think only played, like, the first disc of it before I returned it. It's a long game, and that corridor scene was a little bit tiring as a rental. But yeah, I think RPG-wise, I just played, like, Fable 2, and I enjoyed that one.
There was a lot of, like,
other than that, like Assassin's Creed, and then I watched a little bit of my brother play, like, Halo and stuff like that. But then we also succumbed to the Red Ring of Death, and we didn't we decided not to continue with the Xbox consoles after that.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It's hard to come back from that, honestly.
A little bit. And I think we were both really young at the time, so I don't think we understood that there was some sort of warranty situation where we could have send it back or something. I'm not really sure how that would have worked back then, but we kind of just threw our hands up, like, okay, we're done with this. And then we kind of just did computer games, I think, from then on out. So in our teen years. Yeah. So that's, I guess, a little bit of our history with this current transition. I guess the next topic that we wanted to talk about, if we were to go back to that little pin, is kind of potential loss and, I guess, the craze of trying to gather physical media for these, I don't want to say dying, but I guess storefronts that are no longer existent sort of games. So did you guys get caught up in the Xbox 360 buying frenzy that was kind of happening? Or did you already kind of secure your games?
I feel like I've got the games for the 360 that I would ever want. And I'm very grateful that it's only a handful. That's not a dig at the 360. It had a lot of great games, just not for me, you know. So I have the collection, and as long as I can get my hands on a working 360 at various points, I can play them. Abdallah, what about you? Did you?
I picked up a few of the games that were discounted to, like, 99 cents just for the sake of
digitally.
Like, I was like, okay, I'll just grab these. But, like, I have to say, like, give credit where credit's due, where Xbox has done a great job with backwards compatibility with their newer systems. So, like, it made me less worried about a lot of the major games that I was going to be interested in. Let's say, like, if I wanted to make sure I can secure I have a physical version of Lost Odyssey and those kind of games, but if I wanted to secure a digital version just in case as well, I didn't have to worry as much, because it's also, you can just buy that on the Xbox Series X store or whatever it is you want. So they've done a pretty good job at, like, porting a lot of those games over to the newer consoles, more so than most other companies at this point.
It feels weird to give Microsoft credit for anything because they have, like, some of the, like, you know, every publisher is bad in their own unique way, but Microsoft has some particularly egregious issues. But they are kind of at the forefront of backwards compatibility. Like the fact that you can buy original Xbox games on the latest Xbox console. That's correct, right? You can.
Yeah.
I'm not lying.
There's a limited number, but
you know,
they're still there.
And you can actually download those games, right? They're not streaming like the PlayStation Now
Exactly.
solution.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So they actually had like a
So,
designated team that was like working on backwards compatibility,
mhm.
which is actually pretty amazing. And I think that's kind of like, the structure Xbox is going for more digital future, kind of like that Steam perspective of like being able to just keep things moving and running from previous generations. So that's a
Mhm.
whole different topic though.
It doesn't seem like JRPGs were as affected by the store closure
Mhm.
Yeah.
compared to other genres. Because I know Microsoft, they used to be, really leading like the indie scene in digital games this
Hmm.
era. And I'm not
They
really
did,
sure how
yeah.
many of those are kind of lost now. I think a lot of them have been ported or, moved to other systems, but I do feel like there are some that have kind of, uh,
Fell
lost in
wayside.
the cracks, if you will.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was like the
Just
beginning of
disappointing.
digital games in general. Like
Hmm.
towards the end of the Xbox 360 era is when like digital games became more like prominent. Because the beginning stages of like besides the PS3 and the Xbox 360, it was really like still very physical heavy.
Mhm.
Um, but towards the end, it was like starting to transition to that digital space, and so there's a lot of like games in the beginning that probably fell through or got delisted in general that we don't even know.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
so it's pretty interesting, and one thing to bring up in terms of Xbox is, and as well as PS3, is Eternal Sonata. For anyone who's listening, like just make sure that like that's one of the games that cannot be backwards compatible with the Xbox
The Series
Series
X
X,
stuff.
and it also
Hmm.
doesn't show up on PS4 at all. So
Right.
it's definitely like one of those ones that you
Yeah.
should
That's a
keep
heavy
an eye
hitter you
out.
don't want to miss out on.
It's
Right.
yeah, I have to
And it's
say I enjoy
stranded.
it.
It's stranded now on the physical disc, basically.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Well, still on the PS3 digital store for the time being, but that's coming to an end soon too.
yeah,
Um, so
There's problems with the PS3 digital storefront too.
yeah,
yeah. They're barely upkeeping that one, so who?
right. They're
It's
they're
on its
keeping
last
it
legs.
open. They're keeping it open despite how much they want to close it. I
Oh
think
yeah,
the fan uproar has been pretty consistent. When they try to close it, everybody screams and shouts, and then they backpedal. But um, yeah, it's so weird to me, and I'm not going to soapbox you guys. I'm not going to soapbox. I wouldn't do that to you. But it's so weird to me that video games as a medium are so prone to being lost. Like I can understand films from like the early 1900s
hmm
being lost, right? Because maybe there was only one printing of the film and it deteriorated over time or it got water damaged. Whatever. Like it's back then, they weren't that far removed from the bubonic plague. Like it wasn't, but you know what I mean. Like the
that's
technology
accurate.
hadn't advanced very far. Um,
No.
but now, video games have been around, I guess technically since like the late 70s, but say early 80s and on. Um, we should be able to preserve everything. There should be no reason that we shouldn't be able to get access to everything. And we just don't
Because
like
these were all
there's
digital media at some point, right?
right.
Like
I mean, it's
it's so weird.
whether the digital media is pressed onto a disc or put onto a cartridge or whatever, like it's all digital anyway.
Yeah.
As a physical collector, I love having the
Yeah.
media in a form on my shelf that I can display, but for the sake of just being able to play, like I can go on to, speaking about backwards compatibility, right?
Mhm.
Looking at the Xbox 360 and being able to play a lot of those games on the Series X. That's great. That's cool. But also, it should be a no-brainer. Like I can go on the internet and I can look up any movie that you can think of, just about any movie you can think of, and I can find 20 different places that I can either buy it or stream it or rent it or whatever, either physically or digitally
Yeah.
online right now. Any movie. Like that's how it should be for games. There should be, a way to play games. And I understand like consoles are a thing and
hmm
the console holders, they want to keep that tight grip on their ecosystems.
Yeah.
Cool. I mean, that's good for them, but that's not really good for us.
And that's something that we've realized over time is that like it's really not for the consumers to be that we're like these rules are kind of created, and it's a lot for that. So like if you look at like let's say Nintendo and how they deal with emulation in general for a lot of games that are not ported over, that no one can get access to and doesn't want to spend $300 on a cartridge, and also doesn't have like a Super Nintendo or something like that, like doesn't have a way to play those games inherently. So there's a lot of bad practices that could come out of those things where like these companies don't want to have their IPs taken out, even though it's something that they're not actively offering. And that's like a
Just
whole
the hope that someday they might do something with it.
yeah,
Right.
they just want to hold on to it so that way, yes, one day they might port it out or do something with it, but until then nobody should have access to it. But that's a whole conversation when we could turn that into
I think there's a lot of things that could be a little bit,
yeah,
wishy-washy with that when it comes to ownership, and it, like they did develop the IP, so I do respect them wanting
yeah,
have their ownership over it and control of what to do with it. But there is some things that are kind of consequences because of those actions.
exactly. And maybe sooner or later we'll have an episode with our hot takes on emulation. So
Sure.
yeah, let us know if you
Yeah, let us know. Send us an email, leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube. Yeah, I mean, the problem, I think that these companies, Nintendo, Sony, I think everybody would be happy to continue making money off of their old games. The problem is we didn't establish any kind of infrastructure to make that happen. So when a store, like this all kind of feeds back into the transitioning consoles thing. Like when a store closes, instead of those games kind of being released to the broader public, they're just gone. They're just lost. Like the 3DS eShop closed not that long ago. And there are like real games that you could previously buy and play that you just can't. They're just gone. They're just gone now.
Yep.
And what's the solution? You buy somebody's 3DS that has them preloaded and never delete the SD card. Like maybe
There is another solution. But...
well, yeah.
that's funny.
The gray market solution. But yeah, no, like there's digital ownership is, I mean, not really a thing, but to the extent that we consider it a real thing, digital ownership is like you just can't. It's just gone. You can't get it anymore. So
Yeah, I was turning on my PS3 like earlier just to see what's going on in there, and I realized that I had one of the games on there that I had installed was the Ninja Turtles Turtles in Time remake that they did for the PS3 that got delisted. And
right.
I was sitting there and I was like, man, I really want to upgrade this hard drive, and so I can install more on here for later down the line when it does close out. I can make sure all my games are just on one hard drive. But I also want to make sure that I back up this correctly so I don't lose that game. Because once it's delisted, I mean, it's gone.
It's gone.
Yeah.
I've got PT on my PS4 hard drive, and if I ever, just got to keep that forever, I guess.
Yeah. You don't want to lose that.
Well, there's also instances where a game was delisted and you can no longer download it even though you purchased it, right?
Yep.
Right. Yep. That's the case
so,
with PT. And is that the case with the Turtles? Can you re-download
I'm not
it?
sure about Turtles.
I don't know about Turtles. I need to look into that because that's going to decide my factor, how I go about dealing with that.
It.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's very true. Like, depending on how the rights fall and what the suits are doing behind the scenes, you could just not only not be able to buy it, but you lost your file got corrupted. You deleted it.
Yeah.
Too bad.
It's gone.
It's gone.
Yeah.
And I think this just speaks to, I know when the Nintendo 3DS was closing, a lot of people were just kind of waiting for the store to close because they didn't want to buy them digitally because they knew another solution was just around the corner where they would feel correct in participating in that. So I'm kind of torn on digital storefronts and some of the practices we're seeing. I know a lot of these ecosystems for the storefronts, it's very expensive to maintain them. So that's why they want to close them.
Right.
And if they're not making much of a profit, especially with older games that, they have to keep lowering the price to make relevant, I could see kind of why they would decide to close it. But all these consequences, of course, are not great either. So I'm not really sure what the right solution is for a lot of these things.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing.
Like,
I think
it'd be nice to have a public domain where something like Steam could come along and just offer, some sort of third-party support service for these, lost titles. But I don't know how many companies would, jump on board to that.
Not Nintendo.
Yeah, or no, certainly
Not Nintendo.
Or if those companies even have access to the game files, the source code,
That's true. Some of those get lost.
It's just lost. And like sometimes games that aren't even that old have been lost. Like I think Silent Hill 2 and 3, when they did those
That's why they had to remake those.
They had to remake them.
Yeah. Final Fantasy 8 too was the same.
They didn't
Chrono Cross.
They lost the code and then they had to, I think, build it up again. That's why it's the remaster, right?
Right.
Squaresoft in the PS1 era had a problem with being able to back up a lot of their assets and things like that. So like a lot of those PS1 games they don't have that stuff anymore. So that's why they use AI upscaling for the backgrounds, because they don't have the original artwork. Actually,
they finished the game and then they had a rager in the office. Basically. Everybody blackout drunk, and they woke up and they're like, "Where's the games? We must have done something to them while we were drunk." And that's a fact. You can look that up. I didn't just make that up. The infrastructure is not there to support, keep, like you said, it's expensive for them to run these stores. They're not charities, right? They're companies. They make products, and they sell products. I think one of the issues, from my perspective at least, and tell me what you guys think about this too, is that I don't think we as a culture look at video games as an art form. We look at films as an art form. If anybody was like, we're going to remove all these movies and you're not going to be able to watch them anymore, there would be a significant uproar. And that has happened a couple of times where like a movie was delisted, and it was a big deal, right? Video games get delisted all the time, and it comes up in our circles, right? But it's not a major like scandal news story, because people consider movies to be art. They consider...
Well, say with books. When they burn books, right?
Right.
It's such an uproar.
Right. It's a huge deal. But video games don't get that same, and so there's less motivation to come up with a solution for maintaining all these old games.
And we also don't have the public domain as an option, because usually you have to wait 100 years, right, for like books and movies to become public domain. So I'm kind of curious, when that time comes, what will happen with video games as a medium.
Yeah, that's true.
Any of the surviving games, like, and that, do they survive is the question. Do they last that long?
What's going to be our technology at that point, to play these?
Yeah. Well, that's like the beauty of like just the normal people out there, the more normal developers out there who are just like finding ways to secure and archive these types of things for just the goodness in their hearts, and making it so we have the opportunity to do that. And I mean, they do have to go up against let's say Nintendo going after them or things like that, but at least there's people out there that find value in like the just
digital preservation stuff,
the preservation of it all. And so I mean, we can hope that continues, and maybe
I
one day becomes more
it
mainstream.
will, and we'll just hope that things don't fall through the cracks, because it's not. It's, I think, only select people are really being active in doing that.
And we should be very grateful for the people that do it. But it's an imperfect, it's just like they shouldn't have to do it. It sucks that.
I think it's a thankless job.
It's
honestly.
absolutely a thankless job.
So,
you do it for passion.
Right.
It's like a hobby at that point, and like I thank them for their hobby. Like, I don't have the skills to do it, but I love what they do.
So now with the 360 officially, I guess, dead, should we be kind of looking towards the PS3 and some other of that generation as, things to maybe preserve and look into ownership at this time before, again, prices hike up for those inevitably?
Yeah.
What do you guys think on that?
Yeah, I really think we do. Whether it's getting an SSD and buying and downloading any game that you think you're going to want. I mean, I'm not trying to encourage just like crazy spending, but
no, don't go FOMO on this.
Don't
be deliberate with your purchases, and what
Yeah.
your time allows, to actually play.
Right.
Exactly.
Especially if you're buying a digital game.
Yes.
Maybe
Mhm.
this is just me being a hypocritical physical collector, but like, I don't feel as bad if I buy a physical game and I don't play it right away. But if I buy a
Mhm.
digital game and I don't play it right away, it's like I could have just not spent that money. I don't have anything
Yeah.
to
I
show for it, you know.
I feel the same, and it could have been cheaper.
It
I
could
guess
have been
physical
cheaper.
too, but
Yeah,
usually it's kind of a given with digital,
right.
unless they're delisted. But
Yeah.
Yeah. Like for me, like digital only makes sense if like, you can buy digitally for $40 and the physical version is worth like 250 or 300. Like that's the point.
Yeah.
Because of like
Yeah.
the FOMO that's out there. Then it makes more sense
Hmm.
from
And
that perspective.
honestly, a lot of those games that are expensive on the aftermarket physically, some of them just aren't worth owning or playing. But they
Yeah.
have the desire to own them is just magnified to that point. So people kind of tell themselves, "Oh, it's a good game. I need this," when really they probably don't. I've seen this so many times.
Yeah.
So with so many games.
Are
I
there
know.
particular PS3 games that you all are aware of that that we're at risk of losing? Like, I can think of one or two. I'm just curious if you guys have any in mind.
I know I wouldn't say losing because there are physical editions, but I think there are less of them out there and the price might shoot up at some point is 3D Dot Hero.
3D Dot Heroes, yep.
It's not necessarily an RPG, but it's kind of like a Zelda-like,
Yeah.
what is it
that
called?
realm.
Yeah, it's like a
Action adventure kind of stuff.
action
Mhm.
adventure, but it has like the art style of,
Isometric, right?
it's like the boxy 8-bit like 3D.
Yeah.
It's such a
3D
V. I
voxel
can't voxel.
things.
That's it. Yes.
Mhm.
And it's a fun game, and I have that one, but it's definitely one of those ones you want to look out for. If you do find it for a pretty good price, grab that.
Mhm.
There's some
I know-
Tales of games too, right? That
Yeah.
haven't been ported. I know there's one that's going to get remastered, but it's
Allegedly,
not
we're seeing Zillia 1
Yeah.
at least
Yes.
Yeah.
getting remastered, which that's great. That's a classic. I love that one. But the
The other
Symphonia
ones-
Chronicles on PS3, that's got the
Oh,
collected
yeah.
Symphonia and the sequel. Zillia 2 is
Zillia
also
2
on there.
is Grace's
Graces, right?
yeah.
Grace's F, which I
Yeah.
love. Great game. Have either of you played Folklore on the PS3?
No, but I heard about it.
Yeah.
I played it. I don't own it.
What did
though.
you think of it?
I thought it was like
Is it worth it?
It was a very fun. I mean, it's a primitive. It's like a product of its like. It was one of the first. I think it was one of the first PS3 games in general.
I think it was the first demo I downloaded for my PS3 when I got it.
It's true. Yeah, it was one of the
Very
first
early.
demos. And I thought it was like actually very like a creative idea for a game. It's not very long. It's a very short. I think maybe 5-6 hour game. I think.
Oh, okay.
But definitely worth grabbing if you ever find it for a good price.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I stumbled upon that at a GameStop actually. Like
Really? Mm.
when it was selling for $80+ on the aftermarket, and GameStop had it for I don't know 20, 25, something like that. So I was like, well, this is happening right now.
That's not a bad deal.
Not bad at all. Yeah.
Speaking of GameStop, did you see their tweet?
Oh yes.
Take a moment to laugh at
A little
that.
hypocritical of them with them throwing out boxes.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
used stuff for years.
I know.
Anyway.
They're like, you should have bought a physical. For those who haven't seen it, it's just them kind of like commenting on the Xbox 360, saying that you should have bought it physically. And I don't think
I like David Vink on YouTube. His response to them was like, well, the last time I was in one of your stores, it was like 95% pop figures. So
it's true.
Yeah.
They don't
it's
really
not,
have
it's not
many
false.
games. Yeah, I was in a GameStop like I don't know a month ago, and it was literally like just barely any games in there at all, and let alone Xbox 360 games that they're commenting
Yeah.
on.
mhm.
I've heard there's some
There's some.
stores that have more retro stuff now.
It's true.
This is just from YouTubers, so I'm not really sure. I don't have a local GameStop
Yeah.
to check.
I've
Yeah.
heard that as well. I've checked my local one. They have a couple of Wii U games. Yeah, nothing good. But
That's
but
not
I
retro.
did get I did pick up a few years ago. I picked up my copy of Haunting Ground at GameStop, which
That's nice.
one of the big PS2 bangers. That's
Yeah.
hundreds of dollars. I got it. They were selling it for $100, which was pricey for a used game at GameStop, but it was worth like 3 times that at the time. So
Yeah. It's not a bad
but
find.
yeah. Anyway, point being,
Yeah.
any other PS3 games that we can think of that?
I'm not super familiar with the PS3 because I don't actually own it. I've been thinking about it. I've been on the fence because I know the hardware dies very easily. So I don't know if I want to invest in that ecosystem at this point.
I know you.
But there's a lot of great collections that are not JRPGs that I kind of want because I love the 3D action platformers.
Oh, like Sly Cooper and...
Yeah, Ratchet and Clank, the Jack and Daxter series, all those. I love those.
Yeah. I don't think they ported Sly Cooper to PS4, right? I don't remember.
They have a Vita, but yeah, not PS4.
Okay.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
No, they just did the digital one recently, so there's not a physical edition.
Okay.
Did you guys hear the rumor that they were working on backwards compatibility for the PS5 with PS3 games?
That's always been a rumor, and they say they're still working on it, but I don't know.
Like from what you've heard, was that like you put the disc in the PS5 and it is able to play it?
They
or is
didn't
it all
say.
Okay.
They haven't mentioned that.
I can't see that being very good though, because like their PS2 emulators that they use and PS1 emulators on the PS5 are lackluster, to be quite frank. So like,
but also the PS3, it's such a different infrastructure, right, compared to their other systems. I don't see how it's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's using the Atom processor, and it's not very easy to replicate and or run at high speed, like normal speeds.
Right. You know, like this is something I thought about back before the PS5 came out, and I would love to see it be a reality. Like, they talk about, mid console refreshes where they bring out the PS4 Pro or the eventually PS5 Pro or whatever. I was hoping when the PS5 before it was announced and before it came out, that they would offer a PS5, a basic model for people that just want to play PS5 games, and like a PS5 Pro that lets you play everything. Like, put all the hardware in there. Put that darn cell processor in there. Put that PlayStation 2 emotion engine in there. Like,
what price point would you be willing to pay for this?
Almost whatever they wanted me to. I'm not kidding. Like, almost literally whatever they wanted me to pay. If they were like $1,200, I'd be like, okay, I will sell some things and get back to you. Like,
I would only do that if the hardware itself, it seems like it's going to survive for at least 20 years.
Sure. That's fair. But I also like go nuts. Like, if we're talking about making a super expensive piece of hardware, give it a slot for friggin' PSP UMDs. Give it a slot for Vita games. Like, let's just get a console that plays everything.
Yeah.
And you don't need to make that many of them, because only crazy people like some of us maybe sitting here would purchase it. But it would go so far towards not just preservation, which is like the, tree hugger sort of like, oh, this is right for the world kind of thing that companies don't care about. But it would just instill so much goodwill. I feel like even for people that don't want that, I feel like I would be happy for other people and be like, that's good that that's a thing for them that need it.
I think it would be awesome. Though I think it's going to kind of go a different direction than they are heading. Or they
I think
want
it's
to head,
literally the opposite.
the digital future. So I don't think it's ever going to happen, sadly.
Literally the opposite of their plans.
And
so yeah.
I would wonder, like, okay, so like, and that's where I would say, like, okay, so if let's say you did a PS2 in there, what would they use to upscale it and make it where, like, a PS2 going from 480i or the few 480p games that were on there to upscale to, let's say, 4K? Are they going to have I'm sure they have people that are smart about it and can figure it out, but will they actually put that effort into it?
What have they done to the digital storefront, though? Like, for example, Dark Cloud, how did they make that run on the PS4?
It runs on the PS4. It's a very bare bones, like, I think Digital
That's
Foundry.
Probably what they'll do.
Yeah. Digital Foundry did a review, like, they talked about it a little bit in one of their podcasts or one of their videos of, like, the new PS5 emulator, PS2 emulator on the PS5. And they, like, did a deep dive into a little bit of it, and they concluded that like they really took like even less than the bare minimum, I think, to make it even like remotely good quality. It's like to them it was very disappointing, and I mean, I'm just hoping that I want Sony to kind of like own it and like, come on, give us some good options.
Yeah.
That'd be nice, but I think a pipe dream. Sadly.
There was an era where I could have believed that Sony would make those kinds of decisions when like Shuhei Yoshida was a little more prominent in the company. But I know they got rid of their Jim Ryan problem recently. And I mean, we're still kind of feeling the effects of that, but
it's gonna take some time.
It's gonna, he had a lot of stuff in motion when he left. So, but yeah, when the PlayStation 3 eventually does shut down, that there's a whole bunch more orphaned games. I'm curious. I don't know if either of you know how many digital only PlayStation 3 games there are. Do you have any idea?
They do have some that are not available on the PS4, PS5. Like I know there's a lot of stuff from like the the PlayStation 1 era that you could get on the PS3 storefront that you can't get anywhere else now. So once that's gone, maybe it'll be integrated into the PS Plus subscription service, but y'all know how I feel about subscription services probably by now.
Right.
It's not, I think, a good solution.
Like the funny thing about subscription services too is like I'm kind of the polar opposite. Like I subscribe to all subscription services, but I don't think that I will ever do a video game subscription service. They're expensive. They're expensive, and for some reason they just feel antithetical to everything that I love and care about. The rest of it, I don't. TV and movies for some reason does not bother me, but video games, feels like a slap in the face to me. I don't know.
Yeah, the only one that makes sense is like, and it's starting like Xbox's Game Pass. Like, the one thing they have is that they put like all their new games on there. So if you don't want to commit to it, you can try it out, and then
they're making changes though. Did you hear the new changes?
Yeah, now it's like they keep raising the price to the point where I'm like, I can't defend this anymore.
And they also are guaranteeing the new games are going to be available on there.
Yeah, so they're kind of like backpedaling a little bit, which is not good for publicity's sake, and it's unfortunate.
And people seemed surprised or shocked at the price increases and the changes to the platform. Like this was the plan all along.
Oh yeah,
it was.
Like it's the model of come in at a loss, get people hooked, and then they have no other choice. Like I think if Microsoft had its way, every game would be on Game Pass day one, and they would pay pennies to the developers and pennies to the publishers and keep everybody on the hook.
Yeah, they just want to gather as many people as possible to make the margins work. But they weren't getting those numbers, so that's why they've had to make upscale everything.
Yeah. I mean,
and then the recession's not helping either. So
true.
Yeah. And Disney Plus did it. I mean, if you look at like how much Disney Plus was at the beginning when it first came out to like now.
Yeah, and they bundled it with Hulu and all those other things, right?
Exactly.
It was a sweet deal at one point. I didn't partake, but.
But Branden, to go back to your point on like something that might disappear with the digital stores. Have you ever played the Penny Arcade RPG?
Oh, on the Rain Slick Precipice of Darkness, right? I bought that. I think it's 3 episodes. I bought that, the first episode, way back in the day, and I don't know that I ever finished it. But yeah, that's a good point. That's one that I don't think it ever had a physical release, right?
Nope, I don't think it ever had a physical release, and it was on Xbox and PS3, but it's digital only. So once those digital stores close down, that's a game that's going to be lost. Lost
media.
Yeah. Well, minus the people who back that all up and
who have it. Yeah.
So
we were talking about 360 games earlier. There's also some that are available on the PS3 that you might want to look into. We alluded to earlier. There's also some games on the Vita that have PS3 versions that might be worth looking to as well. There's also Vita games that have PS3 versions that are arguably sometimes better than the Vita versions that might be worth looking into owning either physically or digitally. Lost Dimensions, one that I really enjoyed on the Vita that I hear plays a bit better on the PS3. I think the physical is expensive, but there's, at least for now, the digital version that I think goes on sale constantly.
Mm-hmm. I know.
Do you guys think of any other games that maybe to look out for? I know you just mentioned one a while ago, Eternal Sonata, but...
Yeah. Eternal Sonata. Yeah, that one, I haven't checked the price in a while, the physical price, but the PS3, I don't think it was unreasonable. I think it was fine.
I checked it the other day because I have the Xbox version, but I don't have the PS3 version, so I was contemplating buying that one, and I think it goes back.
And I think the discs are better. Anyone listening, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do hear the PS3 discs, they're a little bit sturdier than the Xbox 360 discs, so that might be something worth upgrading to or considering for your collection if you're looking for the long-term ownership.
Yeah, and I think for Eternal Sonata specifically, the PS3 version came out, like, I think years later, or at least a couple of years later, so it actually has more content. I think there's like an extra dungeon and a few other things that they added to that. So there's more content just all together in that. So that was part of the reason why I was like, I should probably pick this up just for the sake of having the full game.
Do you guys know if any of the PlayStation 3 like greatest hits, or I'm not sure what they called them that era, if they like cleaned up any bugs or something that makes them a bit better than the launch editions? I know there's some like PlayStation 2 games that are like that.
Yeah, I'm aware of some PS2 games, but I don't know for sure about PS3.
Like, I hate the inconsistencies when it comes to, like, the collecting standpoint of those cases, how they're kind of a sore thumb. But if the discs are better, might be something worth looking into. And they're often cheaper than, the launch editions.
I know. Younger me never thought about that. So, like, I always looked at it from a physical perspective of, like, I just don't like... Because, like, I think during that time, the greatest hits ones are always kind of red-ish. I think they had a red case or something. Some of them had red cases and whatnot.
Yeah,
so, like, it always looked weird on the shelf. But, with the way you bring it up is like that final version probably has all the bug fixes or possibly has
maybe some extra content.
Things.
In the case of, in the case of Silent Hill 2 on the PlayStation 2, the greatest hits had the stuff that was added to the Xbox version that you can't get in the base game. So, red case or not, it's definitely superior. I just found one that's interesting. Vandal Hearts. Are you guys familiar with Vandal Hearts on the PlayStation
I've heard of it.
1?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have it. It's an interesting kind of tactical JRPG. I guess there was a sequel, sort of, like called Vandal Hearts Flames of Judgment that was PS3 and Xbox 360. Came out in 2010, so 14 years ago. And it is digital only. So, and that's from Konami. So it's like there are,
Vandal Hearts. Yes, I forgot that. I think I remember faintly that this came out, but I did not think about that as being it is a digital only game. So that's something, because I remember I played the first one for the PS1 and enjoyed that.
Surprisingly good game. Like, I didn't think that I would care for it. It looked kind of generic based on the cover and everything, but it's actually not bad.
It was a product of the time. PS1 games always looked weirdly generic on the cover sometimes. Like, some of them you're just like,
They were still coming off that era when publishers over here thought that Americans wouldn't like anything that was too anime-y.
Anime.
And maybe we wouldn't have. Maybe it would have been a problem. I don't know, but...
Except for us people.
I don't know. Kid me would have loved it.
We would have liked it.
But, I would have been all in on it, but maybe that
they didn't appreciate us back then. Let me tell you, publishers back in the 90s and early 2000s, maybe all through the 2000s, did not appreciate us, even though we are the lifeblood of their companies.
It's true.
They were always going for that blue ocean. Like, let's get as many people as we can. And
when they saw what Nintendo was doing for some of their consoles, I could see some envy.
Oh, the Wii really, it really connected.
It was a revelation.
With a lot of people, brought a lot of people into the fold. I don't think it kept a lot of people. I think that's the problem.
There's some people who kept playing the Dance Dance games or whatever, right? Like, years after. Like, other consoles are still out. I never bought a Wii myself.
I just mean that I don't think that it brought new people in who didn't traditionally play games, but I don't think that they kept going beyond the Wii. I can
see that. They're not like, I think, some new Switch users.
Right. They didn't
become
create
a little bit more
new
invested
customers.
in games.
Yeah. And the Wii kind of got stuck in the shovelware perspective of like.
Yeah.
But then also
and that was
Switch.
also the beginning of like mobile games, right? So you're kind of having some audience separating from that.
Exactly. Yeah. And you can only use the Wiimote for so long until you kind of just get tired of
It never appealed to me, so I never bought it.
Yeah.
Also, I was busy with school, but still.
Yeah. I always looked forward to games that didn't use the Wiimote.
That Pro controller, that felt pretty good. I like that.
I know, but it was sad when they made like Zelda games that required you to keep swinging it, and I was just like,
waggle.
Skyward Sword.
I'm like, I was like,
did you do the archery game?
I do. I have it. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That archery game.
Yep.
That was fine.
I say these things, but I bought into it.
I enjoyed it. But I mean, on topic, like the Wii is kind of another example. Like they shut down their storefront, and they're all of your virtual console games, like all of
the
that.
Wii U.
Yeah, that rich, that fairly rich access that people had to retro on Nintendo, gone, and they've never.
Now it's just
replicated
NSO, right? You can't really buy.
You pay for
anything?
the subscription, and you get the Netflix.
Very limited catalog there.
Netflix of Nintendo games there, and there's some good ones on there, but also the selection is so limited. Like
price point wise, they're better than the other ones, especially if you're on the family plan and split it. But the selection is not something that has made me interested. There are a few games like I want to play Golden Sun, revisit some of those older Zelda, top-down games.
So, I mean, do we have anything else that we want to say about this sad state of affairs? Like,
it's a sad.
I think we've covered a lot of topics today about things to look out for, some kind of the pros and cons of, mostly cons.
Mostly cons.
This
mostly
thing.
Cons. But remember that the 3DS is surprisingly easy to hack.
Oh, right. Before I do that, I need to get a backup 3DS. I don't want to try doing it on my only one, but yes, that is an option.
Yeah.
And I would never tell anybody that they should do that, but I would.
That's why I was kind of scurrying around it earlier. But
I would simply state that it's a thing.
It's surprisingly easy.
Yeah.
Whether you want to do it or not.
He's not endorsing it. He's just saying it's a thing.
It's a fact. It's easy.
Yeah. And the beauty of it is that it's not even about like playing, games, stuff like that, but there's actually servers, people create servers, so you can actually play a lot of your games that you own multiplayer still, if you have multiplayer games.
Yeah, I saw them developing more of that. I don't know. I haven't tested it myself yet, but I've heard positive things for some games.
Yeah. So there's like an option to kind of, they breathe new, like they keep the life going in terms of like being able to like actually enjoy and use like custom servers to do these things and enjoy the games that you probably already bought that you couldn't. Nintendo's
no longer
supporting
access
anymore.
All the features.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I guess we should end today with a question, like every episode. I guess looking back at the Xbox 360 and the PS3, we want to hear from you. What are some of your favorite JRPG titles from this era, and any that you might recommend people kind of look out for when it comes to physical collecting or digital collecting?
Yeah, the ones you can't imagine being without. If the stores all shut down and physical copies became hard to find, what's that one game that's like you gotta have it? You gotta have it on your shelf right now.
Exactly. So we know what to buy.
Yeah, tell me.
As someone who doesn't collect for either system, I need to know. Yeah,
just gotta know.
I need to know. I don't want to get that FOMO life. Like I don't want to know about it later.
Well, if you wait long enough, I think it'll be okay. We've been seeing this trend, with things like the 3DS prices aren't as bad as when that storefront closed.
Yeah, so that's good at least.
Yeah, I think it's a vicious cycle of collecting. It comes with ebbs and flows.
It's always like right after the store closure, you're going to get that like real jump spike that you get. And then you just kind of have to hold off a little bit.
A little bit. There's other consoles to look at for too. Like we talked about the PS3 and some of the Nintendo systems that have already had their closures.
Yeah.
I think the PS4 is a perfect system to look at right now too.
Yeah, Branden and I were talking about that like on Sunday when we were looking at some of the games. Is like, we could just start looking out for the PS4 games that are probably going to, at some point, be harder to find.
They might be, and yet, like when I go into a game store, I don't. Until very recently, I didn't look at the PS4 section.
Me either.
Because I was like, I don't need to go there. Like I'm looking for retro games, But now's the time because I got like Disgaea 5 was like, I don't know, $10, $15.
Exactly.
Like these games are going to be probably pricey someday. And if you're gonna want them and you've got the money to do it, might as well.
Exactly.
Just do some research, I would say. Like if it's available on other platforms for cheaper, or if you don't really see yourself playing the game, don't buy into the FOMO. It's cheap now. It's probably going to spike up later. I think a lot of people get caught up on this. But yeah, if you're deliberate with your purchases, I see why not. To be a little bit, forward and trying to preserve our wallets at least.
Yeah, like actually pick out games that you plan to like. You actually think you like.
Yeah.
If you at the end of the day, so like, don't just buy for the sake of buying, because.
Well, I agree with you guys. I agree with you guys, but there are people, and I just want to.
People. That's true.
I want to encompass everyone here. There are people that just want to build a library of, say, a particular type of game, or for a
or console. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's
if that's your interest, then by all means. Like my interest is 75% playing, 25% I want a library of JRPGs. So even if I'm not planning to get to a game for a decade, if I can find it for a cheap price, I might just grab it because it's like, well, I'm going to want it eventually. I can afford it now.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll be cheaper in the future. Maybe it'll be more expensive. I don't have a crystal ball, so, I might as well.
This comes down to collecting and playing games. They can be mutually exclusive if you want. There's some overlap, of course, but they are two separate hobbies.
People will get on your case on the internet. People will get on your case on the internet if you collect without playing. Just like I get on people's cases.
A lot of that's fueled by
stamps.
jealousy.
Yeah.
People that collect stamps, I'm like, what are you doing? You could put those on letters as postage.
You can.
And you could mail letters to your friends, and you're just going to collect them? That's silly. Why would you do that?
Wait, people angry on the internet? What are you talking about? That's unheard of.
Anyway, I guess to wrap up today's podcast, Branden, where can we find you on the internet?
You can find me on YouTube at Just the Gems, on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, everywhere else as Branden Johnson. And I think that's it. I think we covered it. Yeah.
And Abdallah?
Yeah, you can find.
And I'm Emily from Orbology. I'm on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and some other places that honestly I don't really use, but they're there. So I'll thank you guys for tuning in to today's episode. We'll have another one geared up for next week. And until then, bye.
Bye.